So let's start with the bell work. I love technology, but oops. That was yesterday. Okay, good grief. Okay, so this is just something you definitely need to know for this class because we're going to use it and for the ACT. It's an exponent rule. If you have x, oops, there we go. You have x raised to a fractional power. Then the number on the bottom, the denominator, is the root. So for this problem, the 3 is the root, so it'd be a cubed root. So that narrows it down. And then the number on the top is the power. So that's x squared, which makes it, oops, okay. Let's go with that. Questions? Okay, cool. Now let's pick up where we left off yesterday. So we were on this problem. It was g of x, and we had the 2, negative 2 in front. Oh, and you had kind of done this part, these two on your own, I think. And we just finished that graph of it, and we were about to go to the next one. Okay. If you have a minus sign outside the square root, or whatever it is you're talking about, then that means it reflects it how? Does anybody remember? Yes. So it reflects over the x. And then what's inside that part, that x minus 1, set that equal to 0. That's telling you how far it will shift. Since it's a positive, it would go to the right one. And then this last part, the plus 3, makes it shift up 3. Now we're talking about shifting the original graph. So if you go back to the very first graph we did, all of those points are the ones that are going to be moved around. So instead of at 0, 0, that point that was at 0, 0 is now going to the right one and up 3. And then we have to remember that it's being reflected over the x-axis. So instead of going this way, it's going to go this way. So the next point if you look back at the very first one, was at 1, 1. So it's going to shift 1, and it's going to go it shifts 1, and it's going to go, normally it would go up 3. It is not. It's at 2, 2, because if I plug in 2 here, if I plug in 2 here, I get square root of 1, and that's a negative 1 plus 3, which is at 2. So basically what we're doing is we're plugging these numbers in our head, or you can write them down. So the next one I would plug in would probably be 5, because 5 minus 1 is 4. Square root of 4 is 2. Put a negative in front of it. Negative 2 plus 3 is 1. I'm trying to see it. There we go. And it basically has that basic shape. So like I say on the test, what I would be looking for is that you could tell me the 3 things that were, how it was changing, the transformations. And then I would be looking for definitely that starting point and that you're going in the correct direction. You know, is it pointing up and to the right, down and to the right, up and to the left, down and to the left, things like that. And then I might give you specific points to plug in, and I might not. It just depends. But if you, especially if you get confused, it might be helpful to just pick some points and plug them in. And then you figure out what goes where. You good? Please stop and ask me if we're not. All right. So now let's get to the rules. So that first bit was, hey, us trying to figure out what's going on. What happens as we change things? What happens as I put a negative in front? What happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? So now we're going to actually write this down so that we have it. If we add c to the end, not under a square root, not before you square it, not before you cube it. If I add c to the end, how does that change it, Cameron?
If you
add c.
then it just goes to the it just goes to the right one.
If it's not in with the parentheses, so that means it's not under the square root.
It goes up one.
It goes up, c in this case, yes. Good. So it shifts up c. Whatever c would happen to be. So the next one says, describe what would be done to the x and the y coordinates of the graph. So I'm not changing x because up and down we know is that's the y. So x stays the same, and what would I do to y?
Plus C.
X plus c, very good. So that'll help you find those other points as well. Okay, so Jose, tell me about the next one. What's the minus c do?
Shifts down.
Yep. Good. So then what's that ordered pair going to look like, Shelby?
X then y minus c.
Very good. That makes sense? Okay, good. Now the next one, notice the x plus c is in the parentheses. So that means it's in the function. It's under the square root. Or if it was an absolute value, it'd be inside the absolute value. So that's what that means. So if we plus c in there, what is that going to do, Talia? So it's like you'd take what was in there and you'd set it equal to 0. And what would you do with it? There you go. So it's opposite of what we think. Because anytime it's under the square root or in the absolute value or whatever the function is, you take what's in there and you set it equal to 0. And then so what happens is it's negative in this case. So if it's negative, it shifts how? Left. So, Celia, how would that look on the point? What would I be, which one would be changing, the x or the y? X, because it's left, right? So that's x minus c, because it's going to the left, and y stays the same.